I never thought the day would come when my own son would look me in the eye and tell me I was no longer welcome in the home I'd spent 32 years building. But life has a way of teaching you lessons when you least expect them, doesn't it? My name is Margaret, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found myself again. It started on a Tuesday morning in late September. I remember because the leaves were just beginning to turn, painting the neighborhood in shades of amber and rust. I'd woken up early, as I always did, to prepare breakfast for my son Daniel and his wife Victoria. They'd moved in with me about 8 months earlier, right after their wedding. Daniel had convinced me it made financial sense while they saved for their own place. Being a mother, I couldn't say no. I wanted to help them start their life together on solid ground. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls when Daniel came downstairs. Victoria followed a few minutes later, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself 5 years ago. She was dressed impeccably, as always. Hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, makeup flawless, wearing what looked like another new outfit. I'd noticed she seemed to acquire new clothes every week, but I kept my observations to myself. It wasn't my business how they spent their money. Daniel grabbed a cup of coffee without looking at me. That should have been my first warning sign. My son, who used to wrap me in bear hugs and tell me I made the best breakfast in the world, barely acknowledged my presence anymore. The change had been gradual, so subtle that I'd convinced myself I was imagining things. But that morning, the coldness in the air was unmistakable. Victoria sat at the head of the table. My seat. The chair where I'd sat every morning for 3 decades, where I'd helped Daniel with his homework, where I'd eaten countless meals alone after my husband passed away 12 years ago. She didn't ask. She just sat there, scrolling through her phone, acting like she owned the place. I stood there holding a plate of scrambled eggs, feeling like a stranger in my own home. "Victoria, that's actually where I usually sit," I said softly, trying to keep my voice light and non-confrontational. She looked up at me with those cold blue eyes and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Oh, I know, but I find the lighting here is better for my morning routine. You understand, right, Margaret?" The way she said my name, without the courtesy of calling me Mom or even Mrs. Chen, sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at Daniel, expecting him to say something, to remind his wife that this was still my house. He just kept staring at his phone, shoveling food into his mouth mechanically. "Daniel?" I prompted gently. He sighed, the kind of exasperated sigh a teenager gives their parent. "Mom, does it really matter where everyone sits? Can we not start the day with drama?" Drama. He called my simple request drama. I set the plate down on the counter and took a seat at what used to be the guest spot. My hands were shaking slightly, but I clasped them together in my lap. I'd raised this boy by myself after his father died. I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college. I'd sacrificed vacations, new clothes, and countless personal wants to give him every opportunity. And now I was the one causing drama for wanting to sit in my own chair. The rest of breakfast passed in uncomfortable silence. Victoria made a few phone calls, speaking loudly about some charity event she was planning. Daniel scrolled through his tablet, occasionally showing Victoria something that made her laugh. I might as well have been invisible. When they finally left for work, Victoria in her luxury sedan that I knew Daniel couldn't afford on his salary, and Daniel in his car, I sat in that kitchen and cried for the first time in years. The weeks that followed showed me a pattern I'd been too blind to see. Victoria had been slowly taking over my home, my life, and most painfully, my relationship with my son. She'd redecorated the living room without asking, replacing my comfortable, well-worn furniture with expensive modern pieces that looked beautiful but felt cold and unwelcoming. She'd thrown out photo albums, claiming they were cluttering the space. She'd even convinced Daniel to change the locks, saying it was for security purposes, then forgot to give me a new key for 3 days. I found myself tiptoeing around my own house, afraid to touch anything, afraid to speak up, afraid to exist too loudly. When I tried to talk to Daniel about it, he'd brush me off, or worse, side with Victoria. "She's just trying to make the place feel like home, Mom. You should be happy we want to invest in the house." But it was my house. The mortgage was in my name. I'd never asked them to invest anything. They weren't even paying rent. One evening, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I overheard them talking in the living room. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but Victoria's voice carried when she was excited. "Once we get her to sign the house over, we can really start making changes," she said. That kitchen is stuck in the 90s. The whole thing needs to be gutted. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear Daniel's response. I don't know, Vic. That seems like a big ask. This is her house. For now, Victoria replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. But think about it, honey. She's getting older. She'll need care eventually. Wouldn't it be easier if the house was already in our name? We're doing her a favor by taking this burden off her shoulders. Plus, with your name on the deed, we can take out a home equity loan and finally get that lake house we've been dreaming about. I had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping out loud. A home equity loan? They wanted to use my house, the house I'd worked myself to the bone to pay off, as collateral for their vacation property. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I guess that makes sense, but how do we get her to agree? Leave that to me, baby. I can be very persuasive. I don't remember making dinner that night. I moved through the motions like a robot, my mind racing. Was my son really going along with this? The boy I'd raised to be honest and kind? When had he changed? Or had I simply refused to see who he'd become? The next morning, Victoria approached me with a folder full of papers. Her smile was saccharine sweet, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Margaret, I've been thinking, you work so hard maintaining this big house all by yourself. What if Daniel and I took over the property management? You could still live here, of course, but we'd handle all the stressful stuff. Repairs, taxes, all of it. All you'd need to do is sign here. She pointed to a line on a document that I couldn't quite read without my glasses. I squinted at it, trying to make out the words. What exactly am I signing? I asked. It's just a quitclaim deed. It transfers the property into Daniel's name, but like I said, nothing changes for you. You still live here. We just take over the paperwork. I may have been raised in a time when women were taught to be polite and accommodating, but I wasn't born yesterday. I need to read this more carefully, and probably have a lawyer look at it. Victoria's smile tightened. A lawyer? Margaret? We're family. Don't you trust your own son? Of course I trust Daniel, but this is a major legal document. I'd be foolish not to have it reviewed. She snatched the folder back, her mask slipping for just a moment. I saw anger flash in her eyes, quickly replaced by that artificial sweetness. Of course, take your time. We just want to help. That evening, I called my brother Thomas. He'd been a real estate attorney for 35 years before retiring last spring. We'd always been close, though we didn't see each other as often as we should. He lived about 2 hours away in the city with his husband Marcus. Tommy, I need your help, I said. And then I broke down and told him everything. The way Victoria had taken over my home, the conversation I'd overheard, the quitclaim deed. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Thomas spoke, and his voice was tight with controlled anger. Margaret, listen to me very carefully. Do not sign anything. Do you understand? Not a single piece of paper. I'm coming to visit this weekend. You don't have to do that. I know you're busy with the renovations on your condo. Family comes first. I'll be there Saturday morning. And Maggie, I'm proud of you for calling me. That took courage. I hadn't heard my childhood nickname in years. It brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Tommy. Saturday arrived with crisp autumn air and a sense of impending confrontation. Thomas showed up at 9 a.m, Marcus by his side. They brought bagels and fresh coffee, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe in my own home. Daniel and Victoria were still asleep. They'd gotten into the habit of sleeping late on weekends, then spending the afternoons out with Victoria's friends. I'd become little more than a housekeeper and cook to them. Thomas set up his laptop at the dining room table and asked me to tell him everything, from the beginning. Marcus took notes, his kind eyes full of sympathy. I talked for over an hour, pulling out documents, showing them the redecorating Victoria had done, explaining the financial situation as I understood it. When I finished, Thomas leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. This is worse than I thought. That quitclaim deed Victoria tried to get you to sign, it wouldn't have just transferred ownership. There were clauses in there that would have made you a tenant in your own home, subject to eviction. And the home equity loan provisions would have put you on the hook for debt you didn't incur. I felt sick. But Daniel would never... He wouldn't let that happen to me. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Honey, I'm sorry to say this, but Daniel might not even fully understand what Victoria's been planning. She's clearly the one driving this. As if summoned by our conversation, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Victoria appeared first, dressed in silk pajamas that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Thomas and Marcus. "Margaret, you didn't mention we were having guests." Her tone was accusatory, as if I needed permission to invite people to my own home. "Victoria, this is my brother Thomas and his husband Marcus." "Tommy, Marcus, this is my daughter-in-law Victoria." Thomas stood up, extending his hand. "Nice to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you." Victoria shook his hand limply, her eyes darting between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Daniel came down a moment later, looking confused. "Uncle Tommy? What are you doing here?" "Your mother invited us for a visit. We're family, after all. Thought it was past time we got together." We all sat down for breakfast, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Victoria kept shooting Daniel meaningful looks, but he seemed genuinely happy to see Thomas. They'd always gotten along well when Daniel was younger. The conversation was polite but strained until Thomas casually mentioned, "So, Maggie tells me you two have been helping her with some property management issues." Victoria's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Oh, just trying to take some burden off her shoulders. This house is a lot for one person to maintain." "Interesting. Because I took a look at the county records, and it seems the property taxes are up to date. There are no outstanding liens, and the maintenance has been excellent. Doesn't seem like much of a burden to me." Daniel frowned. "Uncle Tommy, what are you getting at?" Thomas pulled out the folder with the quitclaim deed. "I'm getting at this document your wife tried to get your mother to sign. Did you read it, Daniel?" "Of course I read it. It's just transferring the house into my name so I can help Mom manage things." "Did you read page 4, section 3? The part about Margaret becoming a month-to-month tenant with a 30-day eviction clause? Or page 7, where it authorizes a home equity line of credit for up to 80% of the property value with Margaret as a co-signer?" The color drained from Daniel's face. "What? That's not—" Victoria said it was just a simple transfer. Victoria stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Thomas, you're deliberately misinterpreting standard legal language to cause problems. Margaret, this is exactly why families shouldn't involve lawyers in family business." Thomas didn't raise his voice, but his words cut through the room like ice. "I am a lawyer, Victoria. Real estate law is my specialty. And what you tried to do here isn't family business. It's elder financial abuse. It's actually a crime." "How dare you?" Victoria's face flushed red. "I have been nothing but kind to Margaret. I've improved this house. I've tried to bring some style and grace to her life. And this is how she repays me? By sicking her lawyer brother on us?" Daniel stood up too, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. He looked at Victoria like he was seeing her for the first time. "Vic, did you lie to me about what was in those documents?" "Of course not. Your uncle is twisting everything. You know how lawyers are." But Daniel had picked up the folder and was reading through it, his expression growing darker with each page. "This says Mom would have to pay rent. It says we could evict her. Victoria, what the hell is this?" "It's standard protection language. To protect us, to protect the investment we've made in this property." "What investment?" I finally spoke up, my voice shaking but firm. "You haven't paid a single month of rent. You haven't paid for groceries. You haven't paid utilities. The furniture you bought? You put it on credit cards that I found bills for in the recycling. Bills addressed to Daniel. You've been running up debt in my son's name while living for free in my house." Victoria's eyes blazed. "I don't have to listen to this. Daniel, we're leaving." But Daniel didn't move. He was staring at the papers, at his mother, at his uncle, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. Finally, he looked at Victoria. "Did you tell me the truth about anything?" "Don't you take that tone with me," Victoria snapped. "I'm your wife. You're supposed to be on my side." "I'm supposed to be on the side of what's right," Daniel said quietly. "And this isn't right." Victoria grabbed her purse. "Fine. I'm going to my mother's. When you come to your senses, you know where to find me." She stormed out, and we heard her car peel out of the driveway moments later. The silence she left behind was deafening. Daniel slowly sat back down, still holding the papers. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I wanted to comfort him, but I was hurt too. You knew she was taking over the house. You knew she was pushing me out of my own life. I thought, God, I thought I was being a good husband by supporting her. She kept saying you were old-fashioned, that you needed to modernize, that we were helping you. I was so stupid. Thomas cleared his throat gently. Daniel, your mother and I need to have a serious conversation about the future. Why don't you take a walk, clear your head? We'll talk when you get back. Daniel nodded numbly and left. When the door closed behind him, I finally let myself cry. Marcus handed me tissues while Thomas made fresh coffee. We sat there for a long time before anyone spoke. What do I do now? I asked. He's my son. I can't just throw him out. You don't have to throw him out, Thomas said, but you do need to set boundaries. Real ones. Legal ones, if necessary. He's going to choose her. They always do. Thomas shook his head. I don't think so. Did you see his face? That wasn't a man who's going to follow his wife blindly. That was a man who just realized he's been manipulated. We spent the next few hours going over my options. Thomas helped me draft a letter outlining clear terms. Daniel and Victoria could stay for 3 more months while they found their own place, but they would need to pay fair market rent starting immediately. Any furniture they'd purchased could go with them. The house would remain in my name, period. If they couldn't agree to these terms, they had 30 days to leave. When Daniel came back, his eyes were red. He'd been crying. He sat down across from me and took my hands. Mom, I need to say some things, and I need you to let me finish. I nodded. I've been a terrible son. Worse than terrible. I let Victoria convince me that her way of doing things was better, more modern, more sophisticated. I let her make you feel small in your own home. I watched her disrespect you, and I said nothing. I even joined in. His voice broke. When she called you old-fashioned and out of touch, I should have shut that down immediately. Instead, I let her plant seeds of doubt about you in my mind. I started seeing you the way she wanted me to see you, as an obstacle instead of as my mother who sacrificed everything for me. The tears were flowing freely now, from both of us. After Dad died, you could have fallen apart. You could have given up, but you didn't. You worked yourself to exhaustion to make sure I had everything I needed. You came to every game, every concert, every parent-teacher conference, even when you were dead on your feet from pulling double shifts. You taught me about integrity, about hard work, about treating people with respect. And somewhere along the way, I forgot all of that. Daniel? Please, let me finish. I need to say this. Victoria made me feel like being successful meant leaving behind everything from my past, including you. She made me ashamed of our modest life, of this house that you were so proud to own, of the values you instilled in me. She wanted me to be someone I'm not. And I was so desperate to be the man she wanted that I lost sight of the man you raised me to be. He wiped his eyes roughly. I'm going to end my marriage. I know that probably makes you uncomfortable to hear, but it's the right thing to do. I don't love her. I'm not even sure I ever really did. I loved the idea of her, the image she projected. But the woman I married is cruel and manipulative, and I won't be part of that anymore. Thomas spoke up gently. Daniel, that's a big decision. You shouldn't make it in the heat of the moment. I'm not, Daniel insisted. I've been unhappy for months, but I kept telling myself it would get better, that I just needed to try harder, be more successful, make more money. But it was never going to be enough for her. She doesn't want a partner. She wants a stepping stone. He turned back to me. Uncle Tommy showed me the terms you're proposing. They're more than fair. They're generous, actually. But I want to propose something different. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. He's going to choose her after all. I want to move out as soon as possible. I'll take my stuff and find an apartment. A small one that I can actually afford on my own salary. I need to figure out who I am without Victoria's influence. And Mom, I need to earn back your trust. I can't do that while living under your roof. I need to prove to you, and to myself, that I can be the son you deserve. I couldn't speak. I just reached across the table and hugged him tight, the way I used to when he was small and the world felt too big. The next few weeks were chaos. Victoria came back once to pack her things, and the scene was ugly. She screamed, she cried, she threatened lawyers and lawsuits. She told Daniel he was making the biggest mistake of his life. She even tried to appeal to me, suddenly calling me Mom and talking about how much she'd grown to love me. But Thomas was there, calm and unflappable, reminding everyone that the law was clear and that any attempt to harass or intimidate would result in a restraining order. Victoria left with her designer clothes and expensive furniture, and the house suddenly felt like mine again. Daniel found a studio apartment across town. It was a far cry from the luxury he'd become accustomed to with Victoria, but he seemed lighter somehow. He came over for dinner every Sunday, and we slowly began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to mother him, to fix everything, to make it all better. But Thomas reminded me that Daniel needed to find his own way. The divorce was messy. Victoria fought for alimony, for assets, for everything she could get. But she'd made a critical mistake. She'd kept all those credit card bills, all the receipts for her excessive spending. Thomas helped Daniel's attorney prove that Victoria had racked up over $70,000 in debt during their marriage, almost all of it for her personal expenses. The judge was not sympathetic. During this time, I started going to a support group for parents of adult children. I'd never thought of myself as someone who needed therapy or support, but Thomas gently suggested it might help. It did. I met other mothers and fathers who'd experienced similar situations, adult children who'd pulled away, who'd been influenced by romantic partners, who'd made choices that hurt their parents. In those meetings, I learned something important. I had enabled some of Daniel's behavior. Not the financial abuse, not Victoria's manipulation, but the pattern of not setting boundaries. I'd been so afraid of losing my son that I'd let him treat me poorly. I'd been so grateful to have him living with me again that I'd accepted behavior I should have challenged. One of the women in my group, Patricia, became a close friend. She was 72, sharp as a tack, and had survived her own daughter trying to put her in a nursing home to get her house. Patricia taught me that being a good mother didn't mean being a doormat. It meant loving your children enough to let them face consequences. It meant respecting yourself enough to demand respect in return. 6 months after Victoria left, Daniel came over for Sunday dinner looking nervous. He waited until we'd finished eating before he spoke. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I'm afraid of how you'll react." My heart raced. Was he getting back together with Victoria? Had he met someone new who was just as bad? I've been offered a job in Seattle. It's an incredible opportunity, a significant promotion, and it would mean a fresh start. But it also means moving away from you, right when we're rebuilding our relationship. I took a breath, fighting every instinct that wanted to beg him to stay. "Tell me about the job." His face lit up as he described it. It was clearly something he was passionate about, something that would challenge him and let him grow. As he talked, I saw the son I'd raised, the one who used to get excited about ideas and possibilities. "It sounds perfect for you," I said when he finished. "But what about us? What about making up for everything I did?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Daniel, you don't need to stay here to prove you love me. You need to live your life. The fact that you're asking, that you care about how this affects me, that tells me everything I need to know. You've already proven yourself." "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I mess up again? What if I fall into the same patterns?" "You might. That's human. But you're aware now. You're asking the right questions. And Seattle isn't on the moon. We have phones, we have video calls, and I'm perfectly capable of visiting." He smiled, and I saw relief in his eyes. "Patricia would be proud of you right now." I laughed. Of course he knew about Patricia. I'd told him about my support group, about the things I was learning. She'd probably say I should have told you to go 3 sentences ago and stopped being so sentimental about it. She sounds terrifying. She is. You'd love her. Daniel moved to Seattle 2 months later. Thomas, Marcus, and I helped him pack. It was bittersweet, watching him drive away. But it felt right. He was choosing his own path, not running from me or toward someone else. He was just moving forward. I won't pretend it wasn't hard. The house felt empty again. But it was a different kind of empty than before. This time, I had my space back. I had my dignity. And I had a son who called me every week, who shared his life with me, who asked for advice and actually listened. About a year after Daniel moved, I decided to make some changes of my own. I'd been working part-time at a bookstore for years, mostly for something to do. But I'd always dreamed of writing. I'd filled journals with stories and observations my whole life. But I'd never thought of myself as a real writer. Patricia, in her blunt way, asked me what I was waiting for. You're 63, not dead. You've got a good brain and a lot of stories. Stop waiting for permission. So I started writing. Just an hour every morning before work. Short stories at first, then longer pieces. I joined a writing group at the library. I took a creative writing class at the community college. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to reclaim the parts of myself I'd set aside while raising Daniel, while grieving my husband, while just trying to survive. On Daniel's next visit home, about 18 months after he'd moved, he brought someone with him. Her name was Rachel, and she was a marine biologist. She was warm and genuine, with laugh lines around her eyes and dirt under her fingernails from her garden. She asked me questions about my life, my writing, my interests. She didn't try to impress me or change me. She just wanted to know me. After dinner, while Rachel was helping with dishes despite my protests, Daniel pulled me aside. "What do you think?" he asked nervously. "I think she's wonderful. But more importantly, what do you think?" "I think I'm falling in love with her." "But I'm scared, Mom. What if I screw it up again? What if I turn into that person I was with Victoria?" "You won't." "How can you be so sure?" I smiled. "Because you're asking the question. Because you're aware of the possibility. And because you've done the work to understand what went wrong last time. You're not the same person you were 2 years ago, Daniel." "Neither are you," he said softly. "You seem happier, more yourself." "I am." Losing you, almost losing you completely, it forced me to figure out who I was outside of being your mother. Don't get me wrong, I love being your mom. But I'd forgotten that I was also Margaret, that I had my own dreams and interests. He hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you." Those words, coming from my son, meant more than he could possibly know. Rachel and Daniel got engaged 6 months later. They had a small wedding in Seattle, on a beach with the ocean behind them. It was simple and beautiful, and so perfectly them. Rachel's family welcomed me warmly, and I found myself building new friendships with her parents and siblings. During the reception, Thomas raised a glass to toast the couple. "To Daniel and Rachel, may you build a partnership based on respect, honesty, and mutual support. May you always remember that love isn't about possession or control, but about helping each other become the best versions of yourselves." He looked at me when he said it, and I knew he was thinking about everything we'd been through. I raised my own glass, my eyes misty. The mother of the bride, Susan, came over to sit with me later in the evening. "Margaret, I want you to know how much we love Daniel. He's been so good for Rachel, patient, supportive, genuinely interested in her work. She's been good for him too," I said. "She challenges him in the best ways." Susan nodded. "You raised a good man." "I know it wasn't always easy." "It wasn't. But he's finding his way. That's all a mother can really hope for, isn't it? That they find their way." After the wedding, I flew back home feeling lighter than I had in years. My house, once so lonely, had become a sanctuary. I'd repainted the walls in colors I loved. I'd brought back some of the old furniture that Victoria had gotten rid of, rescuing it from Thomas's storage unit. I'd turned one of the spare bedrooms into a writing studio. My first short story was published in a small literary magazine that spring. The payment was modest, barely enough for dinner out, but I framed the contributor's copy and hung it in my studio. Patricia took me out to celebrate, along with several other friends from my writing group and my support group. These women had become my tribe, my chosen family. "What's next?" Patricia asked, always pushing me forward. "I don't know. Maybe a novel? I've got this idea about a woman who has to rebuild her life after her family falls apart." Patricia grinned. "Write what you know, they say." They do indeed. Daniel and Rachel visited regularly, and I visited them. We'd found a rhythm that worked, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Sometimes he asked for advice. Sometimes I asked for his. We were learning to be adults together, to relate to each other as full people, rather than just mother and son. One Sunday afternoon, about 3 years after that terrible morning, when Victoria tried to get me to sign away my house, Daniel and I were sitting on my back porch drinking lemonade. Rachel was inside reading a book and giving us some time alone. "Mom, I need to apologize again," Daniel said suddenly. "Daniel, we've been over this. You've apologized. I've forgiven you. We've moved on." "I know, but I was thinking about it recently. About how close I came to really hurting you." Not just emotionally, but financially. If you'd signed those papers, if Uncle Tommy hadn't been there, but I didn't sign them, and he was there. You can't live your life dwelling on what almost happened. I know, but I want you to understand something. When I look back at that time, at the person I was, I barely recognize myself. It's like I was sleepwalking through my own life. Victoria had this way of making me feel like I was never good enough, like I needed to constantly prove myself. And the easiest way to prove myself was to side with her, even when it meant going against you. I set down my lemonade and turned to face him fully. Daniel, can I tell you something I've learned? Something I'm still learning, actually? Of course. We all have the capacity to hurt the people we love. We all have the capacity to make terrible choices, to be selfish, to be weak. The measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes. It's what they do after. You recognized what was happening. You did the hard work of ending a toxic relationship. You rebuilt your life. You rebuilt our relationship. That takes strength. I just don't want to ever be that person again. You won't be. Because you know what it looks like now. You know what to watch for. Rachel came out onto the porch, holding 3 glasses of iced tea she'd made. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, making room for her to sit. She settled between us, and we sat there watching the sun set over my garden. The garden I'd let go during those months with Victoria, when I'd felt like I couldn't do anything right in my own home. But I'd reclaimed it, replanted it, and now it was thriving. This is nice, Rachel said contentedly. I see why you love this house, Margaret. It's more than just the house, I said. It's what it represents: independence, security. A place that's mine. Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand. And you'll never have to worry about losing it. I promise you that, Mom. I believed him. Not because he was promising, but because I'd learned to trust my own judgment again. I'd learned that I didn't need someone else to validate my choices or protect my interests. I could do that myself, with the support of people who genuinely cared about me. The years that followed brought more changes. Thomas and Marcus moved closer, buying a house only 20 minutes away. Patricia published a memoir about her own experiences, and I was honored to write a blurb for the back cover. My writing group started meeting at my house, filling it with creative energy and laughter. Daniel and Rachel had a baby, a little girl they named Emma. The first time I held my granddaughter, I felt a complicated mix of joy and trepidation. I wanted to be a good grandmother, but I also wanted to respect boundaries, to not overstep, to not repeat the cycle of being too involved or too distant. Rachel, wise beyond her years, seemed to sense my hesitation. Margaret, we want you to be a big part of Emma's life. We trust you. We value your wisdom and experience. Just promise you'll tell us if we start taking advantage, okay? It was such a simple thing, but it meant the world. The idea that we could communicate openly, that we could navigate this new phase together, that there was mutual respect and trust. As Emma grew, I found myself telling her stories. Stories about her father when he was young, stories about her grandfather she'd never meet, stories about resilience and courage and finding your way. And sometimes, in those stories, I'd include lessons about setting boundaries, about knowing your worth, about not letting anyone make you small. One day, when Emma was about 5, she asked me, "Grandma, were you always brave?" I laughed. "Oh, honey, no. I'm still learning to be brave. But Daddy says you stood up to bad people who tried to take your house." I glanced at Daniel, who shrugged apologetically. She asked why we don't see her other grandmother. I knelt down to Emma's level. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. And it means asking for help when you need it. Some of the bravest things I ever did were asking your Uncle Tommy for help and admitting when I was hurt. Can I be brave like you? You already are, sweetheart. Every day, in your own way. On what would have been my husband's 75th birthday, I visited his grave. I hadn't been in a while, and I felt a pang of guilt about that. But as I stood there, arranging the flowers I'd brought, I realized the guilt was unnecessary. Robert wouldn't have wanted me to spend my life mourning. He would have wanted me to live. We did okay with Daniel, I said out loud, not caring if anyone heard me talking to a gravestone. It got rough there for a while, but he turned out all right. You'd be proud of him. And you'd love Rachel. She reminds me a bit of you, actually. That same quiet strength. A breeze rustled through the trees, and I smiled. I miss you. I'll always miss you. But I'm okay now. Better than okay, actually. I found myself again. The person I was before I became a wife and mother. Though I suppose I'm still those things too. We contain multitudes, right? That's what my writing teacher says. I sat there for a while longer, just being present with my memories. The good ones, the hard ones, all of them. When I finally left, I felt peaceful. That evening, my house was full. Thomas and Marcus had come over with dinner. Daniel, Rachel, and Emma had driven down for the weekend. Patricia had stopped by with dessert. We crowded around my dining room table, the one I'd fought to keep during those dark days with Victoria, and we shared a meal. Emma insisted on sitting in my lap while we ate dessert. She got chocolate on my shirt, and I couldn't have cared less. This was what mattered. These connections, this love, this moment. Make a speech, Grandma, Emma demanded, banging her spoon on the table. Emma, we don't bang spoons, Rachel gently corrected. It's okay, I said. Let's see. A speech. How about a toast? I raised my water glass. To family. Not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and the one we rebuild. To second chances and hard lessons, and the courage to change. To everyone at this table, thank you for being part of my journey. Here, Thomas said, raising his glass. Daniel stood up, glass in hand. Wait, I have something to add. To Mom, who taught me that it's never too late to start over. Who showed me what real strength looks like. Who forgave me when I didn't deserve it and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Everything good in my life exists because you never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I couldn't speak. The tears were flowing, but they were good tears. Healing tears. Marcus raised his glass. To Margaret, one of the strongest people I know. And to all the mothers out there who sacrifice without seeking credit, who love without conditions, who find themselves again after years of putting others first. Patricia, never one for sentimentality, simply said, to us, the survivors, the thrivers, the ones who refuse to be pushed aside. She winked at me. And to the stories we'll tell about all of this someday. After everyone left and the house was quiet again, I sat at my desk in my writing studio. The house that had almost been taken from me was now a home again. Not just a building, but a place filled with love and memories and possibility. I opened my laptop and started writing. Not the novel I'd been working on, but something new. A story about a woman who lost herself and found herself again. A woman who learned that being strong didn't mean not needing help. A woman who discovered that the greatest act of love is sometimes letting go, and the greatest act of courage is sometimes holding on. The words flowed easily, each sentence a piece of my truth. And as I wrote, I realized that the worst day of my life, that morning when my son told me I no longer belonged in my own home, had somehow led to some of the best days. Not because the pain wasn't real or the betrayal didn't hurt, but because it forced me to find my own strength, to set boundaries, to discover who I was outside of being someone's mother or wife. I was Margaret, writer, friend, mother, grandmother, sister, a woman who had been knocked down and got back up, a woman who had been betrayed and chose to forgive, a woman who had lost herself and refused to stay lost. And as I sat there writing, my house quiet around me, my life spread out before me like an open road, I smiled. Because I knew, finally and completely, that I was enough. Not because of what I'd done for others, or what others thought of me, but simply because I existed. Because I had value. Because I was here, still standing, still growing, still becoming. The story wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more heartaches, more joy. But I was ready for all of it. I had found my voice, my strength, my place in the world, and nobody, not Victoria, not anyone, could take that away from me. I saved my work and looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, Daniel and Rachel were putting Emma to bed. Thomas and Marcus were probably arguing about what to watch on TV. Patricia was likely reading or planning her next adventure. And here I was, in my house, in my life, exactly where I was supposed to be. It had taken 63 years, heartbreak, betrayal, and rebuilding to get here. But I'd arrived. And the view from this place, this hard-won place of peace and self-knowledge, was beautiful. The doorbell rang early the next morning, pulling me from my writing. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, old anxieties flared. Was it Victoria? Had she somehow found a way to come back, to cause more trouble? But when I opened the door, I found a young woman I didn't recognize. She was maybe 30, with tired eyes and a baby on her hip. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Are you Margaret Chen?" When I nodded, she continued, "My name is Jennifer. I'm in your support group. Well, I started coming a few weeks ago. Patricia gave me your address. I hope that's okay. I didn't know where else to go." I ushered her inside immediately. The baby, a little boy of maybe 8 months, was fussing quietly. "Come in, please. Can I get you some coffee? Tea?" "Coffee would be amazing," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry to just show up like this. Patricia said you wouldn't mind, that you'd understand." I made coffee while Jennifer settled on the couch, bouncing the baby gently. As I brought her a mug, I noticed her hands were shaking. "What's going on, Jennifer?" And then she told me. A story that was painfully familiar. Her husband's mother had moved in with them 6 months ago, supposedly temporarily while she recovered from surgery. But the mother-in-law had taken over their home, their lives, their marriage. She criticized everything Jennifer did, from how she dressed the baby to what she cooked for dinner. She'd convinced Jennifer's husband that Jennifer was incompetent, that she needed help managing the household. "Last night she told my husband that I was an unfit mother," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "And he believed her. He actually believed her. He said maybe his mother should take over caring for the baby during the day, that I clearly couldn't handle it." My heart ached for her. I saw myself in her story, saw Daniel in her husband, saw the insidious way family could be weaponized against you. "Does your husband know you're here?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "He thinks I'm at my sister's. I just needed to get away, to think clearly. Patricia talks about you all the time in group, about how you stood up for yourself, how you got your life back. I need to know how you did it. I need to know if I can do it too." I sat down beside her, close enough that our knees touched. "Jennifer, you can absolutely do it, but I need to be honest with you. It's going to be hard. It might cost you your marriage. It might cost you relationships with people you thought would support you. But you know what's harder? Living the rest of your life as a ghost in your own home." We talked for hours. I told her everything, holding nothing back. The good, the bad, the moments when I wanted to give up, the times I second-guessed myself. I told her about Thomas and how having someone in my corner made all the difference. I told her about the support group and therapy and slowly learning to value myself again. "Do you have family? Friends who could support you?" I asked. "My sister. She's been telling me for months that something's wrong, but I kept making excuses. I didn't want to admit that my marriage was falling apart." "Call her, right now. Tell her what's happening. Let her help you." Jennifer pulled out her phone with trembling hands. I took the baby, a sweet little thing with his mother's eyes, and walked around the living room while she talked to her sister. I could hear the relief in her voice as she finally admitted the truth about what was happening in her home. When she hung up, she looked lighter already. "She's coming to get me. She said I can stay with her as long as I need, and she gave me the name of a lawyer who specializes in family law." "Good. That's good. Now listen to me, Jennifer. You're going to be tempted to go back, to try to make it work, to convince yourself that it's not that bad. Don't. Not until you've talked to that lawyer, not until you've set clear boundaries, not until your husband proves he's willing to choose you over his mother. What if he doesn't? What if he chooses her?" I looked at the baby in my arms, then back at Jennifer. "Then you'll know. And you'll grieve, and it will hurt like hell. But you'll survive. And your son will grow up watching his mother stand up for herself, watching her refuse to be diminished. That's a powerful lesson." Jennifer's sister arrived an hour later. Her name was Amanda, and she was fierce in the way good sisters are. She hugged Jennifer tight, then turned to me. "Thank you for helping her. Patricia said you were the real deal." "We help each other," I said simply. "That's what we do." After they left, I called Patricia. "You gave Jennifer my address." "I did. You mad?" "No, but maybe next time. Give me a heads up?" Patricia laughed. "Where's the fun in that? Besides, you needed that visit as much as she did. Reminded you how far you've come." She was right, of course. Having Jennifer show up at my door, looking at me like I had answers, like I was someone who'd survived and thrived, it put things in perspective. I wasn't just recovering anymore. I was recovered. And now I could help others do the same. Over the next few months, Jennifer became a regular at group. Her journey was different from mine in the details, but similar in the essentials. Her husband did eventually choose his mother over his wife. The divorce was painful, but Jennifer handled it with a grace I admired. And through it all, she kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept moving forward. I keep thinking I should be more broken, she told me one evening after group. But mostly I just feel free. That's not wrong, I assured her. Grief and relief can exist at the same time. You're grieving the marriage you thought you had while feeling relieved that you don't have to pretend anymore. She nodded thoughtfully. Did you ever regret it? Standing up to Victoria and Daniel? Not once. I regretted the pain it caused. I regretted that it had to happen at all. But standing up for myself? Never. As summer turned to fall and then winter, my life settled into a rhythm that felt right. I rode every morning, worked at the bookstore 3 afternoons a week, attended group meetings and writing workshops. Thomas and I had dinner together every Friday night, alternating between his place and mine. Daniel visited monthly, more often when he could get away from work. And then, about a year and a half after that first visit from Jennifer, I got a call that changed everything again. Mom, it's Daniel. Are you sitting down? My heart jumped. What's wrong? Is it Emma? Rachel? No, everyone's fine. But I need to tell you something. Victoria showed up at our house yesterday. I felt cold all over. What did she want? She's in trouble. Financial trouble. She apparently married some guy right after our divorce finalized, and he emptied her bank accounts and disappeared. She's lost her apartment, her car, everything. And she came to me for help. Please tell me you didn't give her money? No. But Mom, I saw her and she looked defeated. Nothing like the woman I married, and I felt this weird sense of, I don't know, not pity exactly, but something. I took a deep breath, pushing down the surge of protective anger. Daniel, you're a grown man. I can't tell you what to do, but I can remind you that Victoria tried to steal my house. She manipulated you. She was cruel to me. Whatever she's going through now, it doesn't erase what she did. I know. And I'm not planning to help her financially, but she asked if I knew any places that were hiring. She's broke, Mom. Really broke. And I thought, what if I gave her the name of that hiring manager I know at the warehouse? It's honest work. It wouldn't be me giving her money, just a lead on a job. Part of me wanted to scream no. Wanted to remind him that Victoria didn't deserve his kindness. But another part, the part that had grown over these past few years, recognized something important. This wasn't about Victoria. This was about Daniel being the kind of person who helped people, even people who'd hurt him. That was something Robert and I had tried to teach him. Had I really changed so much that I'd discourage that now? If you feel that's the right thing to do, then do it, I said carefully. But Daniel, don't let her back into your life in any meaningful way. Don't let her use your kindness against you. I won't. I promise. Rachel's already made it very clear that Victoria is not welcome in our home and will never be alone with Emma. Rachel's a smart woman. The smartest. She sends her love, by the way. After we hung up, I sat with the news for a while. Victoria, broke and desperate. The woman who'd tried to take everything from me, who'd almost destroyed my relationship with my son, now had nothing. I searched my heart for satisfaction or vindication, but I didn't find it. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the whole situation, tired of the energy I'd spent over the years being angry at her. That's when I realized something profound. I'd forgiven her. Not in a grand, dramatic way. Not by choice or conscious effort. It had just happened gradually, as I'd rebuilt my life and found my peace. The anger I'd carried had simply dissolved, leaving nothing but indifference in its place. I called Thomas and told him about Daniel's call. How do you feel about it? He asked, always going straight to the heart of things. Surprisingly okay. I don't care what happens to Victoria. That sounds harsh, but it's true. She's not my problem anymore. She's barely even a thought. That's healthy, Maggie. That's healing. Is it weird that I'm not more upset? She tried to ruin my life. She tried. She failed. And you've moved on. That's not weird. That's success. A few weeks later, Patricia called with news. Her daughter, the one who'd tried to put her in a nursing home, had reached out. She wanted to reconcile, to apologize, to have a relationship with her mother again. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell. But another part, she's still my daughter, you know?" "I know. God, do I know. When did this get so complicated? When did being a parent stop being simple?" I laughed. "Patricia, I don't think it was ever simple. We just thought it was when they were little and their problems could be solved with Band-Aids and cookies. We talked for over an hour, going in circles the way you do when you're trying to make a decision you're not ready to make. Finally, Patricia said, 'You met with Daniel. You rebuilt your relationship. Do you think I can do that with Claire?' I don't know. Your situation is different. But I can tell you that if you decide to try, you need to go in with clear boundaries. Don't let her back in just because she's asking. Make sure she's changed. Make sure she understands what she did wrong. Make sure she's willing to do the work." Did Daniel do that? I thought about it. In his own way, yes. He acknowledged what he'd done. He ended his marriage. He moved out and rebuilt his life before asking for a place in mine again. He proved through his actions that he'd changed. Claire hasn't done any of that. She just called and said she's sorry. Then maybe she needs more time. Maybe you both do. Patricia decided not to respond to Claire's message right away. She wanted to think about it, to talk to her therapist, to make sure she was making the right choice for the right reasons. I supported her completely. There's no timeline for forgiveness, no mandatory reconciliation. Every situation is different. That winter was harsh. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you want to hibernate until spring. But I loved it. I loved the excuse to stay inside and write, to make big pots of soup, to read by the fire. I'd never been one of those people who needed constant activity to feel alive. One snowy afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a man I'd never seen before, probably in his 40s, with kind eyes and an uncertain smile. "Margaret Chen?" he asked. "Yes?" "My name is Kevin. I'm Victoria's brother. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Every instinct told me to say no, to close the door, to protect myself. But curiosity won out. I let him in, offering tea but keeping my guard up. "I'll get right to the point," Kevin said, sitting on the edge of my couch like he might need to make a quick exit. "Victoria told me what she did to you, what she tried to do, and I wanted to apologize on behalf of my family." I blinked. "Why?" "Because it was wrong. Because I raised her better than that. Our parents raised her better than that. And because I suspect you're not the first person she's tried to manipulate, just the first one who stood up to her successfully. You're her brother. Why are you apologizing for her?" Kevin ran a hand through his hair. "Our parents died when Victoria was in college. I'm 15 years older, so I kind of became her de facto parent. And I failed her. I saw the warning signs, the entitlement, the way she used people. But I made excuses because she was my baby sister. I enabled her behavior." "That sounds familiar," I said quietly. "Daniel told me you have a support group for parents dealing with difficult adult children. I was wondering, do they ever let siblings in?" And just like that, my circle expanded again. Kevin started coming to group, sharing his perspective as someone who'd enabled bad behavior and was now trying to make amends. His presence added a new dimension to our discussions, reminding us that family dynamics were complex and everyone played a role. Through Kevin, I learned that Victoria had indeed taken the warehouse job Daniel had suggested. She was struggling, but surviving. She'd moved into a studio apartment, was taking the bus to work, living a life stripped of all the luxury she'd once demanded. Kevin visited her weekly, trying to help her understand how her behavior had hurt people, but she was resistant. "She keeps saying that everyone else is the problem," Kevin told the group one evening, "that you were trying to hold Daniel back, that he was a mama's boy, that she was just trying to help him become independent." "Does she believe that?" someone asked. Kevin shrugged. "I honestly don't know. I think she has to protect her own sense of self. Admitting that she was manipulative and cruel would mean looking at herself honestly, and I don't think she's ready for that." I understood that. Some people never get ready. Some people go their whole lives blaming everyone but themselves for their problems. It was sad, but it wasn't my responsibility to fix. As winter melted into spring, I finished my first novel. It was rough, probably terrible in many ways, but it was done. I'd written a whole book. Me, Margaret Chen, who'd spent most of her life believing she wasn't smart enough or talented enough to be a real writer. I celebrated with my writing group, with Patricia, with Thomas and Marcus, and with Daniel and Rachel over video call. Emma, now 6 years old, was so excited that Grandma had written a book that she asked me to read it to her. "Honey, it's a grown-up book," I explained, "but I'll write one just for you. Deal?" "Deal!" she squealed. And I did. I spent the next few months working on a children's book about a little girl who learns to be brave. I used Emma as my inspiration, creating a character who was curious and kind and occasionally stubborn. I even attempted some illustrations, though my artistic skills were limited. When I sent the first draft to Daniel and Rachel, Rachel called me immediately. "Margaret, this is wonderful. Have you thought about trying to publish it?" "Oh, I don't know. It's just something fun for Emma." "It's more than that. It's really good. You should at least try." So I did. I researched literary agents, sent out query letters, accumulated a growing stack of rejections. But I kept trying, kept revising, kept believing that maybe, just maybe, someone would see something in my work worth publishing. One morning in June, I got an email from a small independent publisher. They wanted to publish my children's book. The advance was modest, nothing that would change my life financially, but they wanted to publish my book. My words, my story, my art. I called Daniel first. "You're going to be a published author, Mom. This is incredible." Then Thomas. "I always knew you had it in you, Maggie." Then Patricia. "About damn time the world recognized your talent." The book came out the following spring. We had a small launch party at my local bookstore, the same one where I'd worked for years. They gave me a whole table for my book. And people actually came. People I knew, people I didn't know. Members of my writing group, my support group, friends and family. Emma was beside herself with excitement, telling everyone who would listen that her grandma wrote a book about a girl just like her. Daniel and Rachel drove down for the event, as did Thomas and Marcus. Even Kevin came, bringing a card from Victoria that I didn't open. As I sat at that table, signing books with my name printed on them, I thought about that morning 5 years ago when my son told me to know my place. If someone had told me then that this is where I'd end up, I never would have believed them. How could I have imagined that rock bottom would become the foundation for something beautiful? After the launch party, Patricia pulled me aside. "I need to tell you something. I'm moving." My heart sank. "Where?" "Arizona. Claire and I have been talking, really talking for the past few months. She's done a lot of work in therapy, and so have I. We're not all the way there yet, but we're trying. She has a grandkid I've never met, my first great-grandchild. I want to know him. I'm going to miss you so much." "I'm going to miss you too. But Maggie, you don't need me anymore. You've got this. You know who you are now." She was right, and we both knew it. But that didn't make the goodbye any easier. We promised to talk regularly, to visit when we could. And I was happy for her, truly. She was getting a second chance with her daughter. Not everyone got that. The summer after my book was published, Daniel called with news. He'd been offered a position back in our area. It would mean a slight pay cut, but it was a good opportunity, and it would mean being closer to family. "We're thinking about taking it," he said. "But I wanted to check with you first. I don't want you to feel like we're invading your space or your life." The fact that he even thought to ask showed how much he'd grown. "Daniel, I would love to have you closer. But you need to do what's right for your family. Don't move for me. Move because it's what you want. It is what we want. Emma's starting school soon, and we'd love for her to be near her grandmother, her great-uncles. And honestly, Mom, I want to be near you too. These past few years, living far away, I've missed so much. Sunday dinners, random weekday coffees, just being able to drop by. They moved that fall. Not in with me, thank God, but to a house about 15 minutes away. A beautiful older home with a big yard where Emma could play. Rachel got a position at a nearby marine research facility. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Having them nearby changed my rhythm again, but in good ways. Emma started coming over after school 2 days a week while Rachel and Daniel worked. We'd do homework together, bake cookies, work in the garden. I was careful not to overstep, always checking in with her parents before making plans or buying her things. But slowly, we built our own relationship, one based on mutual love and respect. One afternoon, Emma asked me, "Grandma, why don't I have another grandma? Other kids have two." I'd been dreading this question. "Well, sweetie, sometimes families look different. Some kids have lots of grandparents, some have just a few. What matters is that the grandparents you do have love you very much." Did Daddy's other mom do something bad? Kids are perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes. Daddy's other mom made some choices that hurt people. Sometimes grown-ups do that, even when they shouldn't. But that's between the grown-ups. It doesn't have anything to do with you. Do you think she'll ever want to meet me? I don't know, honey. But if she does, that would be a decision for your mom and dad to make, not me. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. Kids are resilient that way. They accept explanations that adults would pick apart and overthink. That winter, Victoria reached out to Daniel again. This time she wanted to meet Emma. Daniel called a family meeting, him, Rachel, and me to discuss it. "What do you think, Mom?" Daniel asked. "I think it's not my decision. This is about what's best for Emma and what you two are comfortable with." Rachel spoke up. "I'm not comfortable with unsupervised visits, and Emma's too young to understand the history. But if Victoria wants to meet her, we could do a supervised meeting in a public place. See how it goes." They decided on a coffee shop. A 1-hour meeting with all of them present. Victoria could meet her granddaughter, but only in a controlled environment. It seemed like a reasonable compromise. I wasn't invited, which was fine. This wasn't about me. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it the whole time they were gone. Worried that Victoria would say something hurtful, do something manipulative, somehow worm her way back into their lives. When Daniel called afterward, I braced myself. "It was okay," he said, sounding surprised. Awkward, definitely. But okay. She was polite to Rachel. She brought Emma a small gift, nothing extravagant. She didn't make any requests for more time or try to manipulate the situation. How did Emma react? She was shy at first, but she warmed up a little. They talked about school and Emma's favorite books. It was normal, weirdly normal. "And how do you feel about it?" There was a long pause. Relieved? Maybe? I think I was expecting the old Victoria to show up, all demands and manipulation. But this woman seemed genuinely humbled by life. I'm not saying I trust her, or that we're going to start having regular visits. But it wasn't the disaster I feared. Over the next year, Victoria had a few more supervised visits with Emma. They never became close, but they developed a cordial relationship. Victoria sent birthday cards and small appropriate gifts. She didn't push for more time or try to interfere in parenting decisions. It was as good as anyone could have hoped for. Kevin told me she was still struggling financially but had stopped blaming others for her problems. She'd started therapy, was working on understanding why she'd behaved the way she had. She might never fully change, but she was trying. That was something. As for me, I kept writing. My second children's book was accepted by the same publisher. I started work on another novel, this one about resilience and chosen family. I took a creative writing class at the community college, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to keep learning. My support group continued meeting, with new faces replacing old ones as people moved or graduated from needing the group. Jennifer eventually stopped coming, having built a full life for herself and her son. But she still called me on holidays, still considered me a friend. I'd helped her, and in helping her, I'd helped myself. On my 68th birthday, my house was full again. Daniel, Rachel, and Emma, Thomas and Marcus, Kevin, who'd become a genuine friend, several people from my writing group. The new neighbors, a young couple who reminded me of Robert and me when we were starting out. As I looked around at all these people, all these relationships I'd built or rebuilt, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not for what I'd been through, but for what it had taught me. That I was stronger than I thought. That asking for help wasn't weakness. That setting boundaries was an act of self-love. That forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or condoning, but rather refusing to let past hurts poison your present. Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, you're smiling funny." "Am I?" "Yeah, like you're thinking happy thoughts but also sad thoughts at the same time." Smart kid. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am to have all of you here. That's happy thoughts, not sad." "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Happy thoughts only." That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, I sat down at my computer. I'd been working on my memoir, the full story of what had happened with Victoria and Daniel and everything that came after. It was the hardest thing I'd ever written, forcing me to be honest about my own failings, my own role in enabling certain behaviors. But it was also liberating. Every word I wrote was a piece of truth claimed, a part of my story owned. This wasn't just about what was done to me, but about what I'd done, what I'd learned, who I'd become. I wrote late into the night, the words flowing like they did when I was truly in the zone. And as I wrote the final chapter about forgiveness and moving forward and the beautiful, messy complexity of family, I realized something. I'd spent so many years defining myself by my relationships to other people. I was Robert's wife, then Robert's widow. I was Daniel's mother. I was the victim of Victoria's manipulation. But now, finally, I was just Margaret. Writer, friend, grandmother, yes. But primarily, fundamentally, simply myself. And that self was enough. More than enough. She was whole and complete and still growing, still learning, still becoming. The journey wasn't over. It would never be over, not really. There would be more challenges, more heartaches, more moments of doubt and fear. But there would also be more joy, more connection, more mornings waking up in my own bed, in my own house, feeling grateful for another day. There would be more books written, more cookies baked with Emma, more dinners with Thomas, more late-night phone calls with friends who understood. The morning I'd thought would break me had instead remade me. The son who'd told me to know my place had taught me, inadvertently, to define my own place. The house I'd almost lost had become a true home, a sanctuary, a space that was undeniably mine. I saved my work and turned off the computer. Tomorrow I'd edit, revise, polish. But tonight, I was done. The story was told. Not the story of what happened to me, but the story of what I did with what happened. The story of survival and growth and the quiet courage it takes to rebuild yourself from the ground up. As I climbed into bed, I thought about that version of myself from 5 years ago, crying in her kitchen, feeling invisible in her own home. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would be okay. Better than okay. That the pain she was feeling was real and valid, but it wasn't forever. That she had more strength than she knew. That help was coming. That she would survive this. But I couldn't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward, taking the lessons we've learned and the scars we've earned and using them to build something new. And what I'd built was pretty damn good. Not perfect, not without its complications and challenges, but mine. Authentically, undeniably mine. I fell asleep smiling, grateful for every single thing that had brought me to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the fear, the courage, the help, the healing, all of it. Every single bit of it. Because without all of it, I wouldn't be who I am. And I really, really liked who I'd become.